Suddenly, a loud, unexpected sound shook the quiet air. It came from the same direction as Princess Sabina. Many seasons ago, in the warm-hearted village of Ndalu, there lived a radiant young maiden named Zobina, the cherished daughter of King Kwando and Queen Maria. Zobina was not only gifted with breathtaking beauty, her kindness and gentle spirit made her shine even brighter. To her father, she was more precious than the rarest gem. To the people of Ndalu, she was the dawn that warmed their hearts. Her smile was like the first light after a storm, soft, healing, unforgettable. Since childhood, Zobina had been inseparable from her closest companion, Abeni. Abeni was the daughter of Queen Maria's dearest friend, so their bond grew naturally from many shared visits and giggles. Each time Abeni's mother came to visit the queen in the grand royal hut, little Abeni would trail along, her eyes lighting up at Zobina's energy and laughter. Their friendship, born under the sun-soaked thatch roofs of the palace, grew stronger each day. But time, like the river Asamu, flows in ways we cannot stop. When Abeni's mother passed away, the girl was left adrift like a canoe with no paddle. Heartbroken, Zobina clung to her father's robe and pleaded with him to let Abeni stay at the palace. King Kwando, moved by his daughter's tears, agreed. From that moment on, Abeni became a part of royal life. Zobina never once made Abeni feel lesser. She offered her the same food, shared her beads and anklets, even asked the royal maid Mama Tolu to treat Abeni like her own. But despite being welcomed with open arms, it was still clear to many that Abeni did not come from royal roots. Whenever the two strolled through the sun-drenched village paths, Zobina's aura always outshone her friends. Her glowing skin, her joyful laugh, they pulled the villagers toward her like bees to blooming hibiscus. Many greeted the princess eagerly, their faces lighting up just to hear her sweet voice, often ignoring the quiet Abeni who walked beside her dot. As both girls blossomed into graceful women, the young men of Ndalu began to notice the princess even more. Whenever Zobina walked by, eyes followed her, hearts skipped beats. Compliments fluttered in like butterflies, and she, ever humble, responded with a smile that lingered in their dreams. Meanwhile, Abeni remained in the background, like a tree in the shadow of a sunlit mountain. To many, it felt as if Zobina held a charm that bound everyone's gaze. Though she meant no harm, some of the other maidens in the village began to whisper behind her back. They felt invisible, threatened, eclipsed. Then one afternoon, everything changed. A tall, confident stranger arrived in Ndalu. He had wealth in his walk and boldness in his eyes. The day before, he had spotted Zobina near the market and had not been able to forget her face. The next day, he approached her without hesitation. "Your beauty humbles me, noble daughter of Ndalu," he said, bowing slightly. "My name is Obaid, from the village of Sifu beyond the eastern hills. I have met many women, but none like you. If the gods favor me, you will become my wife." Zobina blinked, startled by his forwardness. She had never seen this man before, and yet here he was, speaking of marriage with the boldness of thunder. But something about him amused her, and she smiled gently. Obaid stepped closer. "I must confess," he said, "I wish to rename you Zolani, for it means gift of peace, and that is what I see in you." Zobina chuckled softly. "You certainly have a sweet tongue and a river full of courage," she replied. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Zobina turned to Abeni with curiosity. "What do you think of Obaid?" she asked. Abeni thought for a moment. "He is brave, he knows what he wants and doesn't fear to reach for it. But will you accept him?" Zobina shrugged playfully. "Let us see where the path leads." She whispered. In the days that followed, Obaid began to visit more often, and the bond between him and the princess grew stronger. Their laughter could be heard under the mango trees and along the riverbanks. But peace, like still water, does not last forever. One morning, Zobina and Abeni were walking the familiar village path when 4 young women blocked their way. Their Faces burned with fury. One pointed an accusing finger and shouted, "Thief of hearts! Husband stealer!" Zobina and Abeni stopped in their tracks, confused. The women stepped closer. "Yes, you!" The same girl snapped. "You may trick the elders with your sweet smile, but we see you for who you are. How dare you lure away my betrothed?" Zobina frowned. "I don't understand," she said. "Who is this man I'm accused of stealing?" The three others laughed cruelly. "You pretend well, don't you?" one sneered. "You act like a saint, but you know Obaid has promised to her." Zobina's heart sank. "I never knew he had someone else," Zobina whispered, her voice calm but filled with hurt. "He never told me he had a woman he planned to marry." Before she could say another word, the furious young woman from before raised her voice and snapped, "Enough! Your charm has gone unchecked for too long in this village. You may have fooled others, but not me. If Obaid doesn't marry me, I'll blame no one else but you." The girl's voice echoed like thunder as she added, "Everything between us was perfect, until you showed up. Mark my words, you will regret this." And with that, she turned around and stormed off, her friends following behind like a dark wind. Abeni, fuming with rage, clenched her fists. "Why did you let her speak to you like that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Who does she think she is to threaten you in public? I should have put her in her place." Zobina turned to her friend with a weary smile and shook her head. "No, Abeni. Silence was the most dignified response we could give. If we had fought back and the village asked why, what would we say? That we fought over a man?" She paused, her tone firm. "That would have been the most shameful thing of all. I will never raise my voice or hand over any man." Abeni nodded slowly, finally understanding. Then she asked, "So ... what will you do about Obaid?" "I don't know," Zobina replied. "But I must hear what he has to say. The next time." Zobina met Obaid. Her face carried a cloud of sadness. He noticed immediately and asked, "What's wrong, my princess?" Zobina looked at him, her eyes steady. "Were you already planning to marry someone else before you met me?" Obaid blinked, caught off guard. He hesitated, then sighed. "I had spoken to a girl before, yes. But I never took anything to her parents. No drinks, no formal steps." Zobina's face tightened. "Then you were being careless. You knew you had a connection with someone else, yet you still came to me. Now because of you, I was shamed and threatened." Obaid's face fell. "What? Did she hurt you? What did she do?" Zobina cut him off. "None of that matters now. What's done is done. But I've made up my mind. I cannot continue seeing you. Go back. Make peace with her. I wish you well, but this chapter ends here." And with that, she turned and walked away, her footsteps light, but her heart heavy. Obaid stood frozen, unable to move. Had she truly ended it? His fists clenched. "No," he muttered. "This isn't how it ends." Storming off, he made his way to the house of the woman who started the storm. "Ifoma, Ifoma," he shouted. "Come out." Inside the hut, Ifoma heard his voice and rushed out, surprised to find him seething in anger. "How dare you?" he barked. "What gave you the right to confront Princess Zobina? To shame her in front of everyone?" Ifoma's eyes welled with tears. "Obaid, I was jealous. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. You stopped visiting me. I thought she had taken you from me. I was scared. But Obaid's face remained hard. "Well, congratulations, you got what you wanted. Zobina left me." Ifoma blinked, stunned. A smile flickered on her lips for a moment, but then ... "But here's the truth," Obaid continued, his voice colder than a mountain breeze. "It's over between us two. I could never spend my life with a woman like you." He turned and walked away without looking back. Ifoma ran after him, sobbing, pleading for forgiveness, but Obaid didn't stop. He left the village and never returned. Left behind, Ifoma sank to the ground in grief, her sorrow quickly curdling into bitterness. She never forgave Zobina, not even in her heart. As for Princess Zobina, she moved on with grace and quiet strength. Not long after, her beauty and spirit caught the eye of another, a prince from a far-off land named Obaz, heir to the kingdom of Laroko. At first, Zobina was hesitant, guarded by past wounds, but Obaz was gentle, patient. He listened more than he spoke. Slowly, she began to trust again. Eventually, she allowed herself to feel love. Obaz, overjoyed, invited Zobina to his father's palace. He had spoken so highly of her, told his friends about her beauty, her grace, and they eagerly awaited the day they'd see this legendary maiden for themselves. When Zobina arrived, adorned in soft golden beads and a warm coral wrap, Obaz's friends were left speechless. Their eyes widened, their mouths fell open. They glanced at Obaz and nodded in admiration, whispering praises under their breath. The prince beamed with pride. Later that day, a royal banquet was held in her honor. The palace servants laid out a grand feast, roasted bushmeat with spicy palm oil, fresh okra stew, steaming yams, and honeyed tiger nuts. The room buzzed with laughter and cheer. Then suddenly, disaster. A foul stench, thick, sour, and choking, drifted through the banquet hall. It was the unmistakable reek of something rotten, like cracked eggs left too long under the sun. The laughter died. Dishes stopped mid-air. All faces turned, confused and horrified. Was it the food? Was someone ill? The room grew tense. No one could speak, only glances, stiff postures, and cautious sniffs as the strange, stomach-turning smell slowly began to fade. They returned to their meal, laughter slowly creeping back. But just as peace began to settle, a sudden loud sound shattered the room's cheer. It came from the direction of Princess Zobina. No one else was present but Prince Obaz, his friends, and Zobina herself. The moment the sound echoed, all eyes turned toward her. Her heart pounded like a festival drum. She felt fire rise to her cheeks. The first time it happened, it was silent, and though she was startled, she had quietly thanked the gods that no one noticed. But this second time was not silent. No, it came with a boldness that betrayed her completely. To make it worse, the smell that followed was stronger, much stronger, like 3 rotten palm kernels crushed under the sun. It hung thick in the air. No one could ignore it now. Prince Obaz's face tightened in discomfort. This was the first time his friends were meeting the woman he called his future queen, and the only memory they'd carry home was of a terrible stench. How had he not noticed this before? He wondered, confused and humiliated. His friends began shifting in their seats. Their smiles turned to awkward glances. One by one, they made up a flimsy excuse and politely stood, slipping out of the banquet hall like leaves blowing away in shame. Now only the prince and the princess remained. Silence was louder than before. Obaz turned to Zobina, eyes burning. What was that? He snapped. Why would you disgrace me like this, in front of my friends? Zobina couldn't meet his gaze. She looked down, her hands trembling. I don't know, she stammered. It must have been something I ate earlier today. I'm so sorry, truly. And before he could say another word, she turned and fled the palace. As she rushed out, she crossed paths with Obaz's friends. They were gathered by the gates, pretending to discuss important matters, but their chuckles gave them away. There, laughter stopped the moment they saw her, their faces tightening into false expressions of politeness. But Zobina had already seen enough. She lowered her head and ran faster, shame wrapped around her like a heavy cloth. Back at the royal palace of Ndalu, Abeni waited eagerly for her return. She imagined the laughter, the music, the sweet smiles shared between Zobina and the prince. But instead, she saw her dear friend running, breathless, distraught, eyes filled with tears, Abeni ran to her side and held her by the shoulders. What happened? She whispered, guiding her inside. In the quiet of their room, Zobina tried to speak. But as she opened her mouth, the words turned into sobs. Abeni wrapped her in an embrace, confused. Talk to me, she urged. Zobina choked back her tears and told her everything. At first, Abeni laughed, not out of mockery, but because she thought her friend was joking. But then she saw the pain in Zobina's eyes. You're serious? Abeni asked, her voice dropping. That's what happened. Zobina nodded and began crying again. Abeni pulled her closer. It's okay, she whispered. I'm sure the prince will understand. You didn't do it on purpose. He'll come around. Days later, Prince Obaz did visit. Zobina was still fragile, still heavy with shame. She apologized again and again, her voice low, but Obaz gently placed a hand on her shoulder. It's all right, he said. I shouldn't have raised my voice. I was just embarrassed. I'm not angry anymore. He smiled and pulled her into a comforting hug. Zobina closed her eyes, finally feeling safe. Then, it happened again. Another sound. Another betrayal. This one, louder than all. Obaz instantly recoiled, his face twisting with disgust. He shoved her away and held his nose, stepping back like she was a burning flame. Zobina froze. She couldn't believe it. Neither could he. Obaz's eyes flared with anger. This is who you are? He spat. After all that? I should have ended this after the banquet. His voice was sharp as a blade. Without another word, he turned and walked away, breathing hard through his mouth. Zobina tried to follow, her hands reaching for him. Please, wait. I didn't mean, don't ever come near me again. He barked without turning back, and just like that, he vanished. Zobina stood there, hollow and shaken. Her heart felt cracked like dry ground. What curse had fallen upon her? She was raised with grace. She was taught dignity. Why was her body suddenly betraying her in public, in moments that mattered most? Abeni held her close. Don't weep too much over this, she said. If this is how he reacts, maybe he was never yours to begin with. She wiped Zobina's cheeks. Would you want to spend your life with a man who would toss you aside for such a thing? No heart that small can carry a queen. She sat up. Come. Let's visit the herbalist. Maybe there is something that can help. Together, they visited Nuru, the old healer who lived beside the whispering bamboo forest. He listened carefully, nodding slowly. I will give you a brew, he said. But more than the herbs, you must rest. And avoid anything spiced with beans, crayfish, or oil-heavy roots. Let your belly sleep. Zobina followed every instruction. Slowly, her strength returned. Her body calmed. Her spirit, like a broken pot mended with care, began to heal. She returned to her cheerful self. Once more, she wandered through the village paths, her steps light and her head high. And as villagers passed by, they smiled again, not because of her beauty alone, but because they saw her rise from shame with grace. Whenever Zobina walked through the village, her warm smile still touched hearts. But something strange began to happen, something she couldn't explain. Each time a man approached her and tried to speak with her, her body betrayed her. Without warning, a loud, foul-smelling release escaped her. The stench was unbearable. Worse than spoiled ojiri mixed with rotting beans. The moment it happened, the men would recoil in horror, clutching their noses and fleeing before they could even finish a sentence. It didn't happen once or twice, it became a pattern. And that's when Zobina knew something was deeply wrong. She noticed it only happened around men, never when she was with women. But by the time she figured it out, the whispers had already begun. Word spread like dry leaves in the harmattan wind. The people of Ndalu began calling her names. Princess Fumes, Rotten Flower, the Wind Walker. What hurt most was the laughter behind the titles. The same people who once praised her now mocked her. Among the loudest voices was Ifoma, the woman who had once hoped to marry Obaid. When she heard about Zobina's shame, her heart danced with joy. One afternoon, Ifoma ran into the princess and couldn't help herself. "Oh, look," she sneered loudly, "if it isn't the Princess of Stink. How's your perfume today? Rotten egg? Or something more royal?" Zobina lowered her head and walked away quickly, her chest tight with humiliation. Back in the palace, King Kwando and Queen Mariah were heartsick. They had never seen anything like this and were shattered to see their beloved daughter suffer in silence. They gave her all their support, helping her with herbs and changing her meals, hoping it would pass like a storm. Through it all, Abeni remained her steady rock. Abeni had found love with a wealthy merchant who had promised to marry her. She shared the good news with Zobina, who, despite her pain, hugged her and gave her full support. "I believe your joy will come too," Abeni said one day, holding Zobina's hands. "A man will appear, one who will see your soul, not your shadow." Zobina smiled faintly. It was hard to believe, but Abeni's words carried hope like seeds in the wind. Then came Odili. He was unlike the others. A quiet, thoughtful man who had watched the princess from afar and remembered her not as the girl who embarrassed the prince, but as the kind soul who once greeted every child with sweets and stories. One day, he walked up to her. "I've heard the talk," he said gently, "but I don't care. I'd like to be your friend." Zobina blinked, surprised. And then, as if cursed, it happened again. A sharp sound, a terrible smell. She apologized instantly, heart racing with shame. But Odili just smiled. "It's all right, I understand." Zobina stared at him. Could it be? A man who didn't run, a friend who didn't flinch. Soon, the two became close. Odili never made her feel small, never laughed at her pain, never turned away, you see. Abeni said, watching her friend smile again, "I told you, all is not lost." Abeni's wedding was only a week away. King Kwando and Queen Mariah had offered to stand in as her parents. Zobina had promised to help with every detail. But one evening, Odili visited Zobina with a request. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said. They traveled together to a quiet village beyond the rivers. Bend. There, in a little hut surrounded by kola trees, lived Nane, Odili's grandmother, an ancient seer with eyes like moonlight. Nene took one look at Zobina and nodded slowly. "So you're the one carrying the stench of another's curse?" She asked Zobina to open her hands. First, she examined her left palm and shook her head. Then she turned to her right palm and sighed deeply. "This cloud is not from a distant place," Nain murmured. "The wound in your soul was not made by a stranger." She looked into Zobina's eyes. "It came from someone close to you. Someone who smiled near you but held envy like poison." Zobina and Odili were stunned. "But do not fear," Nini continued. "The truth always dances into light." She instructed Zobina to go to Ifela, the sacred river of justice. "Wrap yourself in white. Enter the river. Dip yourself 7 times. If your hands are clean, the river will wash you and return. The curse to the one who sent it doubled in weight." Zobina and Odili bowed in gratitude. The journey for healing had begun. Zobina and Odili thanked the wise old seer and quietly returned to the village. They wasted no time. That same day, they gathered a pure white cloth and Zobina wrapped it around herself as instructed. With steady steps and a brave heart, she walked into the sacred waters of Ifela. She dipped herself once, twice, thrice, all the way to the 7th time, whispering silent prayers with each dive. When she emerged, the river was calm. The air around her felt lighter. She walked toward Odili, who stood waiting under the tall iroko tree. He looked into her eyes, took her hands, and said, "It is done." They returned to the palace, where they found Abeni seated with her soon-to-be husband. The wedding was to happen the next day, and he had come early to help make final arrangements. Zobina and Odili greeted them warmly and gave their blessings to the couple, sharing smiles and joy. But just as laughter filled the room, a foul smell suddenly spread through the air like a cursed breeze. All eyes turned to Zobina. She stiffened, her smile fading. She had thought the healing was complete. Embarrassed, she tried to excuse herself, but before she could take a step, another loud blast echoed through the room, and this time, it didn't come from her. It came from Abeni. Everyone turned in shock. Abeni's eyes widened. What just happened?" she whispered. But before she could say more, another wave of horrible gas escaped her, louder, fouler, almost unbearable. It smelled like a rotting animal that had swallowed death itself. The stench was so vile that even Abeni had to cover her own nose. Her fiancé stumbled back, disgusted. Odili, stunned but sharp, suddenly remembered what his grandmother had said. The enemy is near. He stepped forward and shouted, "Speak the truth now, Abeni. If you don't, the curse will consume you." Abeni trembled. She looked around. Desperately, but more bursts of foul air kept escaping her. She could no longer pretend. With shame flooding her face, she broke down. I'm sorry," she cried. "It was me. I'm the one who cursed Zobina." Gasps filled the room. Abeni fell to her knees. "Since we were young, I've always envied her. She was loved, admired, chosen. Even when we were children, I hid my jealousy behind fake smiles." She wiped her tears, her voice shaking. "Then one day I saw Prince Obaz. He smiled at me. I thought he'd speak to me, but then Zobina appeared. And just like that, he forgot I even existed." She sobbed. Harder. "That day, I went to a powerful sorcerer. I begged him to give her a curse that would keep all men away from her forever. It was meant to be permanent. I never imagined she'd find healing." Zobina stood frozen, tears rolling silently down her face. Odili held her protectively. Abeni's fiancé stared at her, disgusted. "I had no idea you were capable of such wickedness," he said bitterly. "The gods have spared me. I will never marry a heart like yours." He stormed out without another word. Abeni cried out and tried to chase after him, begging for forgiveness, but it was too late. Her lies had finally consumed her. She turned to Zobina to apologize, but Odili stepped between them. "You've done enough," he said coldly, and led Zobina away. When King Kwando heard what had happened, his rage was like thunder. "I took you in like my own daughter," he thundered. "And this is how you repay our love?" He ordered her banished immediately from the palace and the village. But the curse had grown stronger. Now, no matter where Abeni went, the affliction followed her. Even around women, the foul gas erupted uncontrollably. She could not live with others. No one would house her. No one could bear her presence. She became a wanderer, alone, rejected, haunted by her own evil. As for Zobina, her healing was real. She and Odili grew even closer, and love soon blossomed between them. Their wedding was blessed by King Kwando and Queen Mireya, and the whole village gathered to celebrate the union of two souls who had endured the storm and found peace. They lived joyfully, humbly, and happily. The moral of the tale. Today, let us speak of the spirit of envy. Jealousy does not ask who you are. It can take root in anyone. But hear this truth. Jealousy has no power unless you feed it. Once you give it room in your heart, it will drag you into deeds you never imagined and lead you straight into ruin. Nothing remains hidden forever beneath the sky. Whatever seed you plant, you will surely harvest. So when you feel that bitter spirit creeping in, chase it out quickly. Don't let it sit in your chest. Be patient. Wait for your time. The blessings that found your friend will find you too. If your heart remains pure,